Hello, everybody, and welcome to my presentation on critical internationalization at home through critical virtual exchange. These are my talking points. I would like to start by saying a few words about my positionality, because I would like to contribute to the decolonization of knowledge in virtual exchange in particular. I am a white female academic. I have lived and worked in Germany, the US, and the UK. My area of expertise is virtual exchange and educational intervention, also known as collaborative online international learning or telecollaboration. It originates in the learning and teaching of languages and cultures, but is now a practice that is quite common across the curriculum. I've been practicing and researching virtual exchange both in the global north and the global south, but I've only recently started to systematically unpick the assumptions that are underlying the discourses associated with educational technologies and their application, virtual exchange being one of them. Okay, so what's the challenge? For teachers in societies that are becoming increasingly diverse, the question becomes how to prepare students as citizens who can engage with complex issues in a way that reflects equity and justice. So how can we best prepare our learners for agentive, equitable, and inclusive engagement in these complex societies and environments? Virtual exchange is increasingly being proposed as an educational intervention that can assist us in tackling this challenge. What is virtual exchange? We are talking about pedagogically structured online collaborative learning between groups of students in different cultural contexts and geographical locations. It combines the deep impact of intercultural dialogue with the broad reach of technology. It is a strong catalyst in advancing the internationalization of higher education curricula, that is also called internationalization at home. It can prepare for, it can deepen, it can extend, it can bookend, it can even emulate physical exchanges. By no way is it supposed to replace physical exchanges. It prepares students for the globalized digital workplace, and it promotes the development of transversal skills such as openness, empathy, curiosity, teamwork, problem solving, conflict transformation. It is also increasingly promoted as a vehicle for global citizenship education, but this is the first moment where I would like us to exercise a bit of criticality. And you have a definition of global citizenship education on the slide. But scholars like Sharon Stein and Vanessa Andreotti, whose work is grounded in critical pedagogy and post-colonial theory, question such common understandings of global citizenship education, like the one by the UNESCO, because of the focus on self-improvement and the development of leadership skills to save the world. For them, global citizenship education is about tackling the economic and cultural roots of the inequalities in the way power, wealth, and labor are distributed globally. They explicitly challenge hegemonic discourses, the masking of global complexity, and the perpetuation in education of colonial ideologies. And they encourage us to think otherwise. They promote a critical approach to global citizenship education with notions of power, voice, and difference at its core, an approach that is informed by their understanding of critical literacy as a level of reading the word and the world that involves the development of skills of critical engagement and reflexivity. And their work is in turn inspired by Freire and Makido's work. Critical global citizenship education, according to Andreotti, enables learners to engage in the analysis and critique of the relationships among perspectives, language, power, social group, and social practices. And I see a clear interface between critical approaches to internationalization at home, critical global citizenship education, and critical virtual exchange, the concept that sits at the heart of my presentation. So why the critical in virtual exchange? Because VE practices are still electives, often available to only some students. Virtual exchange-based internationalization at home is not inherently equitable and inclusive. It can create new ways of exclusion, create new digital inequalities, for example. It is prone to Western hegemonies and colonial approaches, and the terms under which the exchanges take place can be influenced by many different factors, some of which you see on the screen. And this is why I have started to propose critical virtual exchange, which is about using low bandwidth technologies, so accessible technology solutions, exchanges that specifically target students who are traditionally underrepresented in study abroad or internationalization at home programs. They tend to come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Exchanges that specifically align with the content of the exchanges and the outcomes specifically align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and where possible, the inclusion of local outreach activities where students are in contact and work with local businesses, charities, NGOs, non-profit organizations as part of their collaborative project work. And more recently, I have added the explicit integration of translanguaging approaches as a defining element of critical virtual exchange, specifically, but not only in exchanges where the learning and teaching of languages and cultures is the focus. Translanguaging meaning using all resources, all modes that are available online to make meaning and to communicate, including the written and spoken word. That is encouraging students to draw on their full semiotic budget. I see critical virtual exchange as an instantiation of critical global citizenship education, the way Andreotti has framed it. I see it as a vehicle for action, for public engagement and socio-political change. I see it as an educational intervention which allows us to address social justice, inclusion, coloniality, both at institutional and individual level. And I see it at least as part of the answer to the question I raised right at the beginning of my presentation: how can we prepare students as citizens who can engage with complex issues in a way that reflects equity and justice? I see critical virtual exchange as informed by, but also as informing critical digital literacy, which examines how the operation of power within digital contexts shapes knowledge, shapes identities, shapes social relations and formations in ways that privilege some and marginalize other. But much more importantly, I see critical digital literacy as a way to leverage digital technologies for social justice-oriented action and change. To achieve this, Brown 2017 says critical digital literacy provision needs to be anchored in real life settings and in a more principled way, and it needs to take account of the socio-political context. This is exactly what CVE, critical virtual exchange, does. It happens in real life settings and it has the reflexive use of technology as one of its defining elements. Critical virtual exchange provides an ideal setting for such contextualization. Yeah? And here we come to the role of critical AI literacy, which I see as a subset of critical digital literacy. It overlaps with critical digital literacy. Both are context specific. Both are based on an understanding of literacy as a social practice, so something that we do rather than we have. Critical AI literacy, which is specifically concerned with the perpetuation of epistemic injustices through large language modules. Critical AI literacy that puts the equality, diversity, inclusion, and access lens on the use of generative AI. It requires self-reflective mindsets, and it is essential for a more inclusive and diverse AI education. What all these framings, critical global citizenship education, critical digital literacy, critical AI literacy, have in common is their concern with issues related to socio-political and economic power balances, imbalances, and their impact on an individual's agency, more specifically, their critical consciousness and agency in the spirit of Paulo Freire's critical pedagogy, that is the ability to read the world critically and to act in the world to change it. That is so well captured in André Giroux's concept of critical agency. Now, how does it look like when all of this comes together in a concrete virtual exchange, critical virtual exchange? This is an exchange that I've been mentoring recently. Two colleagues are coming together with their cohorts of students, one colleague from Venezuela, one colleague from Brazil. The students work in small cross-national teams, and they explored the challenges faced by the Yanomami indigenous communities who are living on the Brazil-Venezuela border. The students been conducting interviews in both countries with experts who are working with Yanomami communities. They have also worked with the open access resources that are provided by the Venezuelan University Center for Indigenous Studies in their Amazon Basin campus. And of course, they also have carried out their own research, mostly online. And in addition, the students have experimented with generative AI applications during their collaborative work, like, for example, Notebook LM, which even the free version allows you to analyze up to 50 different sources. These can be links, PDFs, YouTube videos, audio files, Google Docs, Google Slides. And Notebook LM automatically extracts insights from these sources and synthesizes them and by making connections between the topics, and then also presents them in a different format. So you can have a podcast, for example, as an output. However, the students were also engaged in a critical analysis of the generative AI application that they had used to carry out their collaborative project work. So it was about evaluating the effectiveness, the limitations, and the potential biases baked into the application. And we've been collecting data from the students through prompted written and spoken reflections and through focus group interviews. So the main aim of this project was that to jointly produce a short, informative documentary while simultaneously developing a nuanced understanding of the role of generative AI in digital content creation and its implications for representing sociocultural and socio-political challenges and communicating indigenous knowledge. Okay, so what are the implications for virtual exchange, research and practice if we decide to commit to critical virtual exchange going forward? I hope I was able to show you that it is a scalable strategy for critical internationalization at home and for critical global citizenship education, that it will allow us to move from safe, hegemonic to brave, non-hegemonic virtual exchange, where learners can engage in thinking otherwise, as promoted by Andreotti in her critical approach to critical global citizenship education. I hope I was also able to show that it can create new legacies based on an understanding of research as living knowledge. So the praxis knowledge that connects the lived experiences on the ground by the students, by the educators, by the administrators, and the decision makers involved in virtual exchange, in critical virtual exchange, connecting their knowledges with the body of global critical knowledge in global citizenship education. That it can effect real change locally and globally through the students' critical virtual exchange projects, and that it can instigate transformative change both at individual and institutional, and hopefully one day also at educational policy level, one exchange at a time. And with this, I say thank you. These are my references, and this is a forthcoming publication. Thank you so much.